In many parts of Oxfordshire, 20 is the new 30. The County Council, which is a Lib Dem Green coalition, aims to cut car journeys by a third by 2040. In the city, low-traffic neighbourhoods, or LTNs, are designed to stop drivers using quiet streets as cut-throughs. They have inflamed tensions, some bollards ripped out, one set on fire. Some say they just shift traffic elsewhere.
I think there are a couple of junctions where there's problematic, but overall the reduction in traffic is significant, and the people who live inside LTNs are seeing a massive reduction, and that's very, very, very many more people. That's residential areas, that's where people have got their bedroom windows open with kids inside. And the number of kids walking and cycling to primary school and scooting down the street is wonderful to watch and see.
Rishi Sunak, keen to signal he's on the driver's side, has ordered a review of low-traffic neighbourhoods. Now it's reported he could use party conference to announce limits on the powers of councils to make main roads 20 miles an hour and levy fines from traffic cameras and box junctions.
Steve Tuckwell, the Conservative Party candidate, 13,965.
The surprise Tory win in the Uxbridge and South Ruislip by-election was widely attributed to antipathy towards the expanded London ultra-low emissions zone. Rishi Sunak is revving up for the general election and seems to be making a pitch to car drivers, if local radio interviews this week were anything to go by.
The vast majority of the journeys that people make are in their cars, whether it's local bus services in rural areas, whether it's fixing potholes. It's just important that we invest in local roads.
Is it axed or not?
We asked people in Oxford's 20-mile-an-hour low-traffic neighbourhood what they thought about it.
Especially on this road, it's really busy and it's keeping the traffic really terrible. Anywhere you travel like maybe 5 minutes, it takes you like over half an hour.
I'm not really sure what the big issue is about 20-mile-per-hour zones. It seems to me a good idea to slow traffic down, and particularly in heavily populated areas.
20 miles an hour isn't the best speeds.
Yeah, what's man talking about?
But, you know, it can be a bit difficult, so I don't think that's the best choice to make.
My sister can't park anywhere to pick me up. She can't turn on the... It's terrible. But everyone says they want it.
3/4 of parishes and towns in Oxfordshire have asked for lower speed limits. The County Council is promoting 20 miles per hour as the default. Are you anti-car?
Absolutely not. 20-mile-an-hour speed limits save lives. We are introducing them in communities across Oxfordshire, outside schools, outside community centres, always with the support of the local community and the local councillor, most of whom are Conservative out in the rural parts of the county. And the Prime Minister has somehow decided that there are votes in making our streets less safe.
The County Council has no intention of changing direction. In fact, it wants to go further next year with a permit system for some busy city routes. Councillors are now wondering if the Prime Minister could put the brakes on their green plans.
Jane Deeth. Well, I'm joined now by Giles Wilkes, who was an economic advisor to Theresa May, and in the studio by James Cowling, founder of Next Gen Tories, which campaigns for youth-friendly policies, including lower taxes. Welcome to you both. So you lot, both of you, used to accuse the Labour Party of being the party of tax and spend. Well, the Tory party has become the party of tax but not spend so much. That's a terrible thing to be, isn't it, for you lot?
So I think it was right to raise taxes during the pandemic and just after the pandemic, because we had a huge amount of economic uncertainty around how the economy would perform. But I think now the economy is doing slightly better. And whilst there is fiscal constraints, I think we can look at some tax cuts. I think the more important question is who we tax and how we tax. Our priority would be working people first.
Yeah, but if you cannot afford HS2, which we've been talking about for decades, you cannot afford to cut people's taxes, surely.
So I don't know on HS2, we haven't heard that yet, but I think...
Well, I mean, it's going to be foreshortened, isn't it? I don't think that the Prime Minister's hiding what he's going to say there.
So I think you're right on the tax point insofar as demands for spending are only going to go up. So we have to ask ourselves, how do we pay for those things? So you can either tax more or you can do supply-side reform, something that government has been hesitant to do. So building more homes, building more green infrastructure.
Would you carry on with HS2?
I personally would, but there are things you can do for free. So supply-side reforms can be free if you make it easier for people to build. One of the things that slowed down HS2 and has made it so expensive is that it's very difficult to build anything in this country. So those kind of policies are things that can be done without government spending, and then you can cut taxes when you receive that growth.
So do you still agree with Liz Truss, who's been obviously giving a few speeches here and there saying she was misunderstood, everyone bottled out, she had a great plan for growth which would have ultimately lowered taxes. Is that complete pie in the sky, or do you still subscribe to her view?
I never did, personally. I think her analysis was correct insofar as growth is too low, but her prescription was short-term tax cuts. Whereas I would have done the supply-side reform first, and then you get the growth, and then you can pay for tax cuts.
Giles Wilkes, does what you've just heard from James make any sense to you? Do you agree with him?
I agree with him that Liz Truss's scheme would not have worked, and you need to demonstrate, first of all, where your spending cuts come from before you even begin thinking about tax cuts as well. But the current spending totals are already, this is hard to believe, but really, really tight. I mean, they're rising by £5 or £10 billion a year for departments when inflation is 5–10%, and we're talking about £400 billion. So they need 20 or 30 billion a year just to stay still. So I don't think any government can be responsible and talking about tax cuts right now until they demonstrate how the very beleaguered public services can be supported and kept going. So I think Liz Truss, by talking as if you can just offer tax cuts and everything good will then follow, was being rather irresponsible.
But I mean, I'm not even sure if that's what's, even the most optimistic members of your, the Tory party are contemplating at the moment. It seems as if they've got nowhere to go. Taxes can't rise any further, spending has to be cut. And so what they're doing is throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks. Giles.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with you there. And I think to a large degree, they're paying the price for having cut things too much under the coalition government, where I was an advisor to Vince Cable, the Lib Dem at the time. And because we didn't rely on any tax rises then, instead we actually cut taxes by freezing the income tax threshold, cutting corporation tax. We allowed the public services to be run down and leave a kind of deficit to be paid back by future governments. In other words, this one and the next one. And I'm afraid we evaded the choice there to a certain degree. Taxes should never have fallen then, and as a result, they need to rise now.
James, I mean, there's an election coming up next year, at the very latest, January 2025. Is the real problem here for Rishi Sunak, who seems to give with one hand and take away with the other, whether it's, for motorists or whether it's, maintaining the triple lock but then scrapping, the winter fuel allowance, that people just aren't listening anymore?
So I think Giles is right, actually, that the fiscal situation is tight. So it's all about priorities. And so one of the things that we're talking about...
But they seem to be chopping and changing the whole time.
I don't think that's particularly true. And I think we'll expect, or I certainly hope that we expect more on the Prime Minister's priority. So one of the things that we would argue is that young people at the moment are getting a worse deal than older people who are often retired, have mortgages paid off. So I think some of the things you should be focusing on housing, on childcare, on eventually, I agree with Matt, Giles rather, that taxation is a tricky issue. But what we have to talk about is as the tax burden can come down, we focus on working people.
So housing, childcare, education. He's focusing on old people, and people with cars who drive petrol cars and want to drive them faster in cities. Those are not your priorities, are they?
So it's about broadening who you talk to. So great, you're talking to old people and motorists, but you also need to talk to other types of voters. And polling amongst the under 45s is extremely low at the moment with the Conservative Party. So you have to have a message to those people. And totally agree with Giles, money is tight, but there are things that you can do that aren't hugely expensive, and you can then speak to those voters.
Giles, just a final question to you. Is the problem here that because there's so little room for manoeuvre when it comes to money, what this government is trying to do is to save its skin in the next general election by, basically bailing into the culture wars, whether it's, over cars, obviously immigration, HS2.
Yeah.
You agree?
I'm afraid so in a political way. When you lose the economic argument, you start reaching for the culture argument. But I'm not sure people are listening there because, as James says, they really need to win over the young who are supporting the Conservatives in numbers like 10 or 15% and are not really on the same side as them in terms of culture war. They want to see actual delivery and competence. They don't want to see fights being brought up between the generations. So I quite agree with you. They've backed themselves into a cul-de-sac.
OK, got to leave it there. Giles Wilkes, James Cowling, thank you very much indeed for coming in.